Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're diving into a topic that, well, many of us navigate, or certainly know someone who does. The world of online dating and connection.
Hmm.
For years, it promised, convenience, boundless possibility, maybe even love. But the landscape, it seems to have shifted quite dramatically.
It really has.
What started as this tool for connection has, for, well, countless individuals, revealed a deeply sobering, even chilling, darker side. We're going far beyond just a surface look here. We're
Yes,
trying to confront a reality that feels far more widespread and frankly more sinister than most probably realize.
indeed. And what's fascinating here, in a disturbing way, is how something that was ostensibly designed to bring people together
Right.
has, for so many, become a space just fraught with profound danger and, tragically, violence.
Yeah.
This deep dive isn't just about, acknowledging a problem exists. It's about confronting a really fundamental and alarming shift.
A shift in how relationships form.
Exactly. How trust is built, or maybe more often, shattered, and the unprecedented risks that have just popped up in our increasingly digital world.
Mhm.
The implications are huge, really far-reaching. It's not just affecting those directly involved, but, our collective sense of safety, of trust.
You might think you know this digital landscape. Maybe you've even used these platforms yourself. I know I have.
Many people have.
But the information we've uncovered suggests this issue is just pervasive and incredibly insidious. It's actually been likened to a second global pandemic.
It's a powerful comparison.
It is a
Yeah.
crisis spreading largely unseen, causing devastating harm. So, our mission in this deep dive is to understand precisely why.
Right.
We'll be exploring these harrowing personal stories that really lay bare unimaginable trauma. We'll dissect the disturbing and evolving trends and how predators operate.
And the scale.
Yes, revealing the sheer staggering scale of this crisis. And ultimately, we need to examine what all of this means for how we protect ourselves and, crucially, those we care about in this, well, this rapidly evolving digital frontier.
The digital frontier as a hunting ground.
Okay, so for many people, the idea of finding love or maybe just companionship online, it's become pretty unremarkable, right? Almost an everyday part of modern life.
Absolutely. It's normalized.
It's seen as this convenient tool, an efficient way to expand your social circle, maybe search for a partner. But what we've discovered reveals this profoundly disturbing underlying reality
Mm-hmm.
that the very mechanisms of online matchmaking have been, as one expert sparkly put it,
Hijacked by evil.
exactly hijacked by evil. And this isn't about, the occasional awkward encounter or a fleeting disappointment.
No.
We're talking about an unprecedented rise in sexual violence, a wave of crime that is deeply unsettling, pervasive, and, as we'll see, often goes unreported.
Which leads us straight to a critical question. How? How did these platforms, initially conceived and marketed for romance, for genuine connection,
Yeah.
how did they evolve so rapidly, so profoundly, into what's unequivocally being called a virtual hunting ground?
It's hard to fathom.
It is. The answer is complex, but it fundamentally ties into the very design and the societal integration of these technologies.
Like how?
Well, think about features like the low barrier to entry. Creating a profile, incredibly easy,
Too easy, maybe.
perhaps. Then there's the perceived anonymity, which allows individuals to misrepresent themselves with, no immediate consequence.
Right, the catfish phenomenon, but with much darker intent sometimes.
Exactly. And the rapid-fire matching algorithms. They often prioritize volume over any kind of genuine vetting.
Just keep swiping.
Right. And these elements, while they offer convenience, they inadvertently create this fertile ground for exploitation.
And the scale you mentioned.
The scale is just. It's so extensive, so serious, that professionals who specialize in these trends, they're likening it to nothing less than a second global pandemic.
Wow. A second pandemic.
Yeah. This isn't just a handful of isolated incidents that we can sort of dismiss as outliers or just bad luck.
No.
It's a deeply systemic issue.
Mm.
It's causing extensive harm, emotional, mental, physical well-being at a scale that most people, and this includes seasoned professionals, parents, caregivers,
They just don't see it.
they're completely unaware of it.
Yeah.
It really forces us to reevaluate our long-held assumptions about digital safety and these profound shifts in how we vet, how we trust strangers in the digital age.
So, okay, what does this signify for those people who are genuinely looking for connection, for a partner, for a meaningful relationship online?
Well, it means recognizing that the digital space, while, yes, undeniably offering incredible reach and apparent convenience,
Mm.
has simultaneously introduced this treacherous new layer of vulnerability,
Yeah.
a vulnerability we've never really encountered before in the same way.
It feels different.
It is. It's a vulnerability that preys on the very human desire for belonging, for love, for intimacy, and it often manipulates these fundamental needs into devastating opportunities for exploitation.
Personal journeys into unimaginable trauma.
And bringing this closer to home, I mean, the human cost of this digital frontier,
Yeah.
that's where the true gravity, the horror, really becomes terrifyingly clear.
Mm-hmm.
Our deep dive, it really begins with a harrowing story of Sarah. She, like millions of others, was simply looking for what so many people seek, a loving, hopefully long-term relationship.
A very common goal.
Right. So she decided to try a dating app, Bumble, for the very first time. And despite her natural apprehension, that mix of excitement and nerves when you put yourself out there,
Sure.
she matched with a man who seemed promising. And rather than rushing, she chose to take things slowly. She waited a few months after connecting online before they finally met in person.
Which sounds sensible, cautious.
It does. And once they did meet, the connection seemed to solidify pretty quickly. It evolved into daily meetings, building this sense of routine, of comfort.
And at first, that connection between Sarah and this man, it seemed genuinely promising, as you said, seeing each other almost every day.
Mm-hmm.
That frequency, it naturally fosters a profound sense of security, doesn't it?
Yeah, you'd think so.
Intimacy, even. It cultivates this belief that you genuinely know someone, that you can trust them on a deeper level.
Right.
And this perceived safety, this developed sense of comfort, it makes the eventual betrayal and the violence that followed just all the more shocking, all the more devastating.
So what happened?
Well, one particular night, Sarah was unwell. She expressed clearly that she couldn't be intimate.
She set a boundary.
The clear boundary. But her vulnerability, instead of being respected, was shockingly, brutally weaponized. Her clear boundary, her physical condition, it became the catalyst for a violent assault that would change her life forever. It left this indelible mark that, years later, still resonates.
The details of what happened next they're incredibly confronting. Difficult to recount, honestly.
Take your time.
But it's crucial, I think, to understand the depth of this trauma, the specific, terrifying control that was exerted. During the assault, he began to thrust and started saying these vile accusations to her.
Oh, God.
Things like, "I knew you never loved me. I knew you were thinking about other boys when you were with me."
Blaming her.
Completely.
Oh.
Sarah recounts fighting back desperately, kicking her legs, trying to get some leverage, trying to pull him off her. But the violence only escalated. She was screaming in his ears, "Stop!" But then he put his hand around her throat.
Oh, no.
He used her neck as leverage, effectively choking her while he was assaulting her. Sarah recalls pulling and pulling, gasping for breath, until he finally let go, allowing her to a momentary gasp of air. But the terror didn't end there. He reached beside her head, grabbed a pillow, and with his chilling premeditation, slammed it onto her face. He pressed his hands down, smoothed it really tight, pushed until she was gasping for breath, desperately fighting for air, and eventually just crumpled, utterly helpless, violated.
Gosh. Sarah's bravery in speaking out about something so deeply traumatic is just immense. It's a testament to her strength in the face of such profound injustice.
Absolutely.
However, her story, tragically, it doesn't end with legal accountability. Despite the overwhelming nature of her account, the clear violations, the man she accused was charged with 2 counts of rape, 2 of suffocation, and 2 of strangling.
Serious charges.
Very serious. Yet, in a truly heartbreaking outcome for Sarah, he was found not guilty on all 6 counts.
How?
The trial, initially scheduled for a month, collapsed in just 7 days. This outcome, as you can imagine, deeply shook her. It left her with this unbearable sense of injustice, questioning, as she put it, why are we even pretending rape is a crime if this was going to happen?
I can understand that feeling.
And this verdict, it really highlights a profound critical flaw in the legal frameworks at the time. This problematic reliance on historical consent laws that often required demonstrable physical resistance or explicit verbal refusal.
Which isn't always possible.
Exactly. Trauma responses often involve freeze, an inability to move or speak, or compliance born out of sheer fear for one's life. The chilling implication, and it speaks to a systemic failure of the justice system, is that next time, this perpetrator might be even more dangerous, emboldened by the lack of consequence.
And the next victim.
Might not be as lucky, and I use that word very carefully, to survive or to be able to tell their story, let alone attempt to seek justice.
And Sarah's experience, as devastating as it is, it's tragically echoed in other stories that have emerged from this digital landscape.
Mm.
It highlights this disturbing pattern.
Mm.
Consider the story of B, a young single mom who, like so many, was desperately looking for love for the new start using these applications.
Right.
She connected with someone who, on the surface, seemed perfect. Handsome, had a job, their conversation flowed naturally, and crucially, he didn't seem to mind that she was a mother.
Seem to tick the boxes.
To B, he looked safe. That's a critical factor, isn't it, when you're putting yourself out there, especially as a parent?
Absolutely. Safety is paramount.
So they met up just hours after matching online, hoping for connection, for romance, maybe a fresh beginning.
And this immediately illustrates that incredibly rapid and dangerous transition that can happen from perceived online safety to very real, immediate physical danger.
It happened that fast.
Apparently so. B started to feel uncomfortable when he expressed a desire to hook up, as she described it. She allowed a kiss, but quickly tried to end things there, to draw that clear boundary again.
But he didn't listen.
He emphatically did not take no for an answer. He physically overpowered her in a public car park, in ostensibly open space, which is chilling in itself. Yes. Demonstrating this immediate assertion of control. He apparently hopped over the center console, laid on top of her in the front passenger seat, pressing himself right down, chest to chest.
Oh my God.
Making it explicitly clear through physical dominance that she wasn't going to move, that he had power over her. It just demonstrates how quickly initial perceived consent, or even just mild interest, can turn into outright coercion and a terrifying assault.
Especially when physical dominance is used like that.
Precisely. Especially in a confined or isolating space like a car. The perpetrator used the vehicle, used his body, to establish immediate, undeniable control.
What happened next is it's a horrifying example of pure coercion. A complete disregard for B's autonomy. He brazenly told her, "You're going to give me oral sex or I'm just going to keep driving."
A direct threat. Coercion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He eventually did pull over on the side of the road, forcing her to comply with his demands through intimidation and threat. And then, with this callous indifference, just left her there.
Just abandon her.
Yeah. Her feelings afterward, describing herself as feeling really shit, really horrible, disgusting, dirty, disappointed in myself for putting myself in that position. I mean, it's just a raw, painful testament to the profound violation she experienced.
The emotional wreckage. It's immense, often far deeper, far more complex than the physical trauma itself.
Right.
The psychological burden of an assault like that, where your personal agency is just completely stripped away, it leaves deep, lasting scars.
And the self-blame.
Yes. What's truly critical and deeply saddening here is that added layer of shame and pervasive self-blame that victims so often experience in these situations.
Mm-hmm.
B, like countless others who suffer technology-facilitated sexual assault, was too scared, too ashamed to report the incident. She grappled with thoughts like, I'm so stupid and I should never have gotten in the car.
Oh, B, it wasn't her fault.
Of course not. She went home, immediately showered, desperately trying to act like it never happened, trying to wash away the trauma, the memory, as if that could somehow erase the violation.
That instinct to just wash it away.
It's common. This mental burden, this relentless internal questioning and self-blame, it's a unique and agonizing aspect of online facilitated sexual assault. Victims often struggle with this cognitive dissonance, right? Trying to reconcile the image of the safe online connection with the violent attacker.
The person they thought they knew.
Exactly. They grapple with questions like, was I complicit? Did I ask for this? Is this my fault? Which, of course, emphatically, it never, ever is.
Never.
But this intense internal struggle is a significant barrier. It creates additional, often insurmountable obstacles to reporting these crimes. It leaves a vast number of cases hidden from official statistics, and it prevents victims from seeking the justice, the support, the healing they desperately need. It just perpetuates this cycle of silence and impunity.
Which underscores the crucial societal responsibility we have.
Absolutely. To shift the blame unequivocally away from victims and onto the perpetrators where it belongs, and to support survivors in overcoming these internal struggles.
The staggering scale and hidden depths of the crisis.
So, stepping back again, what does this all signify for the broader picture? I mean, these aren't isolated incidents, are they? These aren't just individual misfortunes we can compartmentalize.
At all.
The heartbreaking stories of Sarah and B, while deeply personal, deeply harrowing, they are tragically representative of a much larger, much more insidious crisis unfolding right now across our digital landscape. It's impacting millions of lives globally.
Absolutely. The true scale of this issue is far more staggering than most people realize. For instance, there was a comprehensive survey by the Australian Institute of Criminology,
Okay.
a leading national research body focusing on crime and justice. They surveyed 10,000 people.
Wow, that's a big sample.
It is. And the results revealed a truly shocking statistic. A staggering 74% of those surveyed had experienced sexual violence, whether online or in person, after meeting someone on a dating app.
74%.
74%. 3 out of every 4 users reporting an incident of sexual violence linked to using a dating app.
That's unbelievable.
It's almost hard to comprehend. This scale is bigger than we could imagine, as the researchers put it. And the harm it inflicts is extensive, deeply impacting emotional health, mental health, physical well-being, at a level that, as sources indicate, we could have ever predicted. And what's even more alarming is that this pervasive issue often goes unrecognized by professionals, by parents, by caregivers. It leaves countless victims suffering in silence without the understanding, the support, or the intervention they desperately need.
It points to something systemic.
Absolutely. The sheer volume points to a systemic failure, not merely individual bad actors operating in isolation.
And it's not just the statistics painting this grim picture, is it? You mentioned forensic specialists.
Yes. Forensic specialists, the dedicated doctors who treat victims of sex crimes, who work on the front lines of trauma, they are seeing a rapidly growing number of cases where the offenders were initially met online.
And they're seeing this trend directly.
And these specialists have noted an added complexity to the trauma these victims experience, a layer that goes beyond what might typically be expected from a sexual assault that occurred in a more traditional context.
What kind of complexity?
Well, this complexity, as these specialists highlight, stems directly from what they describe as an added layer of shame and stigma unique to these online facilitated assaults.
Shame and stigma again.
Yes. Imagine the immense psychological burden. A person has actively chosen to swipe right, to engage in conversations, to feel like they really knew this person through their carefully curated online persona, their digital interactions.
You build a connection or think you do.
Exactly. It creates this deeply personal investment, this perception of choice and control. So to then experience violent sexual assault at their hands, it creates an immense difficulty in reconciling these two wildly disparate images.
The person online versus the attacker.
Precisely. The trusted online presence and the violent attacker. This profound sense of betrayal, it extends far beyond the physical act. It's a violation of the digital intimacy, the trust that was fostered. And this internal conflict, the questioning of one's own judgment, one's choices, that's precisely why so many of these cases go unreported. What we see in the official statistics, it's truly just the tip of the iceberg.
So much is hidden.
So much. The additional barriers to reporting, like the pervasive self-blame we discussed, that insidious feeling that victims are somehow complicit or responsible for putting themselves in that situation.
Which they are not.
Which they are absolutely not. But those feelings are not only false, they actively prevent justice. And this highlights the crucial, urgent need for society to fundamentally shift the blame, unequivocally, away from victims and onto the perpetrators where it belongs, and to support survivors in overcoming these intense internal struggles.
The evolving threat, new predator tactics, and child vulnerability.
Okay, so as if these individual stories and the staggering statistics weren't alarming enough, our deep dive reveals that the methods predators are using, they aren't static. They're evolving.
They are adapting, yes.
And becoming even more disturbing. It's not always just a single perpetrator and a single victim in a one-on-one scenario anymore, as terrifying as that already is. The strategies are becoming more sophisticated, more organized.
Indeed. And what's truly chilling here in the most profoundly disturbing sense is the sheer depravity and the increasing complexity of these newer tactics.
Like what? What are we seeing?
Well, we now have multiple documented cases where victims have gone to meet someone in real life expecting a one-on-one encounter, only to find that the person they connected with online has orchestrated a group assault. They've invited multiple other individuals, often accomplices, to participate in the sexual violence.
Oh my God. Like an ambush.
Essentially, yes. It transforms a hopeful meeting into a premeditated group attack, vastly increasing the victim's vulnerability and terror.
That's horrific.
And other cases involve victims being lured to an offender's house, maybe expecting a relaxed meal, a casual evening, only for doors to be locked behind them. physically entrapping the victim within an increasingly hostile, inescapable environment.
So premeditated entrapment.
It highlights a terrifying escalation in premeditation and control, moving far beyond the initial digital interaction into calculated physical capture.
And it's not just about these increasingly dangerous in-person meetings either, is it? The online space itself is being weaponized in new, horrifying ways.
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
Pushing the boundaries of digital exploitation far beyond what many might imagine. The threat is truly pervasive, existing both physically and digitally.
Yes. Beyond direct physical encounters, the platforms themselves are being leveraged for malicious purposes. We're seeing the widespread sharing of intimate images without consent, revenge porn, essentially. Sophisticated blackmail schemes, where perpetrators threaten to expose private information or images unless demands are met. Insidious sextortion, where victims are coerced into performing sexual acts online under threat.
It's endless.
But perhaps most disturbing, and a truly terrifying evolution in predatory behavior, is the emergence of instructional content online.
Instructional? What do you mean?
We're now seeing how-to guides. Quite literally, step-by-step instructions on how to sexually assault people, or even how to facilitate the drugging of individuals for the purpose of assault.
Are you serious? Guides on how to commit these crimes?
Yes. This kind of material often resides in private, encrypted chat groups or on the darker corners of the internet, making it incredibly challenging for law enforcement and online safety organizations to track and dismantle.
That's chilly.
It really shows how quickly the use of online spaces has evolved for deeply criminal purposes. It demonstrates a terrifying level of planning, coordination, and shared knowledge among perpetrators that was, frankly, unimaginable just a few years ago. It's like a distributed network of malevolence.
And perhaps the most disturbing discovery in our deep dive into this evolving landscape is that children, the most vulnerable among us, are increasingly getting caught up in this murky, dangerous world. The digital frontier has expanded to become a perilous space for them too, with just devastating consequences.
And this raises an important and deeply troubling question. How? How are children, particularly underage individuals, becoming victims in what are often adult-oriented spaces and platforms?
Yeah, how is that happening?
Dr. Joanna Tully, a specialist who handles child sexual assault cases, reports an alarming, undeniable increase in underage victims who have been active on dating and social media sites.
She's seeing it firsthand.
Directly. Her data reveals a truly shocking statistic. In cases of technology-facilitated sexual assault involving children, a staggering 50%, half of those children, met their offender using Snapchat.
50% on Snapchat. Why Snapchat?
The appeal for predators often lies in its ephemeral messaging. The disappearing messages can create a false sense of security or, perceived untraceability for both victims and offenders.
Makes sense.
And it's not just social media. Dr. Tully also highlights that children are accessing adult dating sites, often through lax age verification or social engineering, and the consequences are absolutely dire, devastating.
Well, it's terrifying.
It's being argued by experts quite strongly that this constitutes almost a second global pandemic of the 21st century in terms of the sheer scale of child abuse and exploitation that is now rampant in the online space. It's spreading virulently, affecting countless young lives.
And that's a terrifying reality lived by Allison, a mom whose daughter accepted a friend request on Snapchat 4 years ago. The boy claimed he was 15, seemed like a peer, but was actually 19. And after just 5 days of chatting, building what seemed like this innocent, age-appropriate connection, they agreed to meet at a train station, a seemingly public place.
But the encounter that followed was swift, brutal. A stark illustration of premeditated manipulation and exploitation.
What happened?
Her daughter was quickly lured into a toilet cubicle, a confined, isolated space within that public area, and he immediately asserted control. Stood between her and the door, physically trapping her.
Okay.
He then proceeded to force her to perform oral, anal, and vaginal sex, and took photos throughout the entire horrific ordeal.
Taking photos.
It clearly demonstrates a pattern of manipulation, premeditation on his part. He knew exactly what he wanted, executed a plan to achieve it, leaving no room for escape or refusal. Traumatized, alone, still in shock, the teenager made her way home. Desperate to shower, right? To wash away what had happened, somehow cleanse herself of the violation.
That instinct again.
But her mother, Allison, intuitively knew that a rape kit was necessary. A heartbreaking, agonizing decision for any parent to make for their child. Knowing it meant prolonging the immediate discomfort, the re-traumatization, but being vital for any hope of justice.
Such a hard call for a parent.
Unimaginably hard.
And chillingly, despite police collecting irrefutable evidence from the toilet cubicle, tracking down the man who admitted everything, he didn't deny any of it.
He confessed.
Admitted everything. But he couldn't be charged under the consent laws at the time.
Why not?
Because her daughter didn't fight and didn't verbally say no. He got off, scot-free, escaped accountability.
Because she froze or was too terrified.
Exactly. So what does this signify for survivors like Allison's daughter? Denied justice due to these, well, what seem like profound legal shortcomings that just fail to understand the realities of trauma.
Well, Allison and her husband bravely shared that their daughter, who's now 21, working as a nurse in the public health system, she has indeed come a long way.
That's good to hear.
She's doing a remarkable job rebuilding her life. But as I said, it's been a really hard climb, a truly arduous, ongoing journey to heal and rebuild after such trauma, and then the subsequent failure of the justice system. It just highlights the profound, lasting impact of these assaults, especially when justice is denied due to inadequate or outdated legal frameworks. The consent laws back then often operated on that problematic no means no principle, sometimes requiring physical resistance or explicit verbal refusal.
Which ignores trauma responses.
Completely. It fails to account for the common freeze response during trauma or situations where fear, intimidation, coercion prevent a victim from physically fighting or verbally refusing. It underscores the urgent, critical need for consent laws to accurately reflect the complex realities of coercion, intimidation, trauma.
So absence of no doesn't mean yes.
Never. Where the absence of a verbal no or a physical fight should never, ever equate to consent. The silence of trauma, the inability to fight or speak due to fear, is not, and never should be, consent. This legal gap not only re-traumatizes victims, but also emboldens perpetrators.
The unanswered call for protection and accountability.
So if we connect all this back to the broader landscape of safety, it becomes devastatingly clear, doesn't it? While people invest so heavily in physical security for their homes, expensive locks, reinforced doors, elaborate camera systems to keep people out,
Right, fortifying the physical space.
the most vulnerable point might ironically be a device in a bedroom, a smartphone in a child's hand or an adult's hand, with just one click, a simple digital interaction. The stranger is already in the bedroom of your child or yourself.
It completely reframes the idea of the threshold, the boundary.
It really shifts our understanding of safety. It pulls the threat out of the tangible physical world and into this pervasive, interconnected digital space that I think many of us still perceive as relatively benign or controlled. The old rules of safety just don't apply in the same way.
Indeed. And this new reality presents immense, complex challenges for law enforcement. No one knows that better than Superintendent Jane Doty, chief of the New South Wales Sex Crimes Unit.
Okay.
In her 34 years of policing, she says she has seen the very worst of humanity. And she unequivocally states that much of that worst is now presenting online, facilitated by these digital platforms.
So the nature of the crime she's seeing has shifted online.
Significantly. Law enforcement faces unique hurdles. Jurisdictional complexities offenders can be anywhere in the world. The challenge of digital evidence collection, preservation, and the rapid evolution of technology, which constantly creates new avenues for crime faster than laws or policing can possibly adapt.
It's a constant catch-up game.
It is. She emphasizes that it requires everyone working together. The community, the dating apps themselves, e-safety organizations, the police. Everyone has to collaborate to make these platforms as safe as possible.
A united front.
Exactly. The decentralized nature of online interaction means protection can't fall on a single entity. It demands a unified, coordinated front against these pervasive, evolving threats, where data sharing and consistent enforcement are absolutely paramount.
The burden on the user.
Okay, so what does this all mean for us, the users? The individuals just trying to navigate this increasingly treacherous digital dating landscape. A significant and frankly unfair part of the prevention still seems to fall directly on individuals. The advice we consistently hear is, educate yourself, be acutely aware of the risks, trust your gut if something feels off.
Which puts enormous personal responsibility on each user.
Right, to identify and avoid danger themselves.
Which immediately raises that critical question again. Why? Why is the onus predominantly so heavily on the potential victim to protect themselves from predators who are exploiting these platforms?
It feels backwards.
It does.
Yeah.
This isn't just about personal vigilance. It ties into a systemic issue of responsibility. For example, Mothers using dating sites are specifically advised not to disclose information about their children early on,
Why is that?
because offenders specifically target single mothers, not necessarily for a romantic relationship with the woman, but solely to gain access to her children.
That is chillingly calculated.
It is. And while awareness, putting up that little bit of a shield, while that's undoubtedly important for personal safety in this environment, the sentiment from survivors is clear, it's resounding.
What are they saying?
They're saying, the onus shouldn't be on us to have to do that, though. You should be able to trust that these people that are being offered up to you on apps are who they say they are.
Yeah, that basic expectation of safety.
It speaks to a fundamental breach of trust. A deep-seated expectation that the platforms themselves should provide a baseline of safety, rather than leaving users to constantly navigate this minefield of potential dangers. It highlights a critical imbalance in accountability.
App accountability, a voluntary approach.
So when we talk about collective effort, about responsibility, what exactly is the role of the dating apps themselves in all this? I know Australia introduced a new code of conduct,
That's right.
touted as a world first, designed to make reporting easier for victims, mandate banning offenders. On the surface, that sounds like a really good, necessary step towards greater safety.
It does sound promising.
But here's where it gets, profoundly interesting and reveals a pretty significant loophole.
The crucial, indeed alarming catch is that this code of conduct is voluntary.
Voluntary, not mandatory.
Voluntary, which means there's essentially nothing to stop a rapist or a domestic violence offender from jumping on any dating app, matching with any woman or man, and repeating that behavior on a different platform or even the same one with a new profile.
So they can just hop between apps.
Potentially, yes. While the code does mandate certain obligations, once an offender is reported requiring apps to take action once a formal report is made, for instance, its enforcement mechanism is still seen by many as, pretty toothless.
So it has no real teeth.
Limited teeth, perhaps. While it's acknowledged as more than we had previously, and the eSafety Commissioner is actively working to strengthen these powers, the voluntary nature leaves this significant, gaping loophole for predators to exploit.
Which raises the question,
Why isn't there a mandatory, industry-wide screening process for offenders? A unified red flag system that would prevent known perpetrators from simply migrating from one platform to another, continuing their harmful behavior unchecked.
is that technically feasible?
The technical challenges are real, admittedly. Identity verification across platforms is complex. Privacy concerns regarding data sharing are legitimate. But the current voluntary approach places an immense, unfair burden on victims and allows a dangerous cycle of abuse to continue unhindered across the digital ecosystem.
So no universal ban list.
Essentially, no. The lack of a universal mandatory ban list means predators can simply hop from Tinder to Hinge to Bumble with minimal effort, leaving a trail of victims in their wake.
The quest for safer connections, shifting tides.
Okay, so given all these profoundly disturbing realities, we've uncovered the widespread violence, the evolving predator tactics, the heartbreaking stories. It's hardly surprising, is it, that a growing number of people seem to be moving in an entirely different direction, finding themselves increasingly disenchanted with the whole online dating experience. They're actively seeking alternatives, maybe a safer path to connection.
Indeed. This widespread disenchantment hasn't just led to a shift, but a remarkable revival in more traditional in-person matchmaking events.
Really, like speed dating.
Things like that, but also more curated events. We're seeing companies emerging specifically created to counter the negative, often dehumanizing experiences of dating apps. They even brand themselves with names that directly reflect this sentiment, like dating apps suck.
Huh? Tells you something.
It does, and their business, notably, is booming. It really shows how the market, driven by user frustration and this fundamental unaddressed desire for safety and authenticity, is responding.
People want something different.
A deep-seated need for more secure, trustworthy ways to connect. These events often incorporate elements like pre-vetted guest lists, public and controlled environments, facilitated introductions, things that directly address the vulnerabilities inherent in anonymous online interactions.
Try to build safety back in.
Exactly. People are actively seeking out environments where they can feel genuinely safe, feel seen, rather than just being another profile to swipe past.
So what does this signify for the future of connection? How we find love, companionship. These in-person events, they seem to offer something the apps often fundamentally lack.
Which is?
The essential human element. The ability to gauge body language, engage in spontaneous conversation, build rapport in real time.
That immediate feedback loop.
Right. They contrast sharply with the digitized, often paywall-driven, and profoundly gamified system of dating that apps have created, primarily, let's be honest, to make money.
The business model driving the experience.
Yeah. The focus shifts from swiping through these curated, often deceptive profiles to actual face-to-face interaction, where intuition and genuine connection can maybe thrive, unmediated by algorithms designed for engagement, not necessarily genuine connection.
Which raises that fundamental critical question right at the heart of the app design itself.
You do.
Are these apps truly about looking for love, or are they primarily about looking for sex? Or maybe something else entirely?
Yeah. What's the real goal?
Our deep dive suggests the lines between these intentions are just so blurred that it's incredibly difficult to distinguish. There are undoubtedly people using these platforms looking for both, right? Casual encounters, serious relationships.
Sure, a mix.
However, the biggest challenge, according to those working directly in this space, hearing countless user stories, the biggest challenge is for the people looking for love to find the other people looking for love.
Finding like-minded people is hard.
It highlights a fundamental design flaw, perhaps, or maybe an unintended yet devastating consequence of the app model. When platforms prioritize endless swiping, superficial metrics, quick matches, all driven by engagement algorithms to maximize profit, genuine connection can be easily overshadowed by predatory intent or just a focus on fleeting encounters. It creates this high signal-to-noise ratio. It makes it incredibly difficult for those seeking meaningful, safe relationships to truly feel secure and find what they're genuinely looking for amidst the sheer volume of users with such differing intentions.
Outro. Well, this deep dive has revealed a profoundly challenging and frankly disturbing landscape. Women and children in particular seem to be navigating and surviving the very worst modern technology has to offer, bravely confronting this digital space that's evolving at an alarming pace with clearly inadequate protections.
It's a testament to their resilience, absolutely, but it's also a searing indictment of the system that allows this to persist.
Absolutely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the profound challenge for us all as a society is to get ahead of it. We simply cannot afford to be reactive anymore. We have to anticipate. We have to prevent.
Be proactive.
Exactly. It's about collective responsibility. From fundamental platform design that prioritizes safety over engagement metrics, to robust and truly mandatory legal frameworks that reflect the realities of trauma and coercion.
Right.
To fostering widespread community awareness and education about digital risks. It's an urgent call to action for every stakeholder, tech companies, legislators, parents, individual users. Everyone has a role.
So ultimately, what does this all signify for you, the listener, as you navigate your own connections, your relationships in this digital age?
Well, it means being informed, certainly, being vigilant. Recognizing that while technology offers these incredible avenues for connection, it also demands a heightened awareness of safety.
But it's more than just individual awareness, isn't it?
I think so. Perhaps more importantly, it means actively demanding, fiercely advocating for stronger protections, so that the burden of safety doesn't fall solely on the individual. It's about demanding that the systems themselves become safer.
Which leaves us with a really important question for you to consider, a thought to maybe mull over long after this deep dive concludes.
Yeah.
In a world where connection is increasingly digital, defined by algorithms and screens, how do we collectively rebuild trust? How do we redefine responsibility? And how do we ensure that the fundamental human pursuit of connection never again comes at the devastating cost of safety and dignity? How do we build a truly safe digital frontier for human connection?
That's the question. And if you or anyone you know is a victim of sexual violence, please know that help is available. You can call 1-800-RESPECT-T. That number is 1-800-737-732. This deep dive has certainly shown us just how vital and how urgent those resources are.